So how about a jewelry company made and designed by a medically retired female officer? Yeah, let's support her. It's called Blue Monarch Co. You can find it on Instagram. You'll be able to check it out in the show notes. Anyways, I've been wearing this necklace from her company since January. It has come in I don't take it off. It comes in the shower, it comes in the tanning booth, it goes everywhere with me. And it looks amazing still. Go check it out because right now she's offering you, as one of my listeners, 40% off. The code is going to be right down in the show notes, along with the link to her website. And you can go check out the pictures of me wearing my angel necklace on Instagram if you have any questions. Hope you check them out. Ed, I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. Can you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, good morning, Autumn. I'm Ed Prokop. I'm a retired LAPD commander. I retired after 27 years in January of 2021. Currently serving with the Federal Law Enforcement Training Centers as the chief of the Leadership Institute. I am a Reserve Air Force OSI special agent, and I've also got 6 or 8 satisfactory years with the Marine Corps Reserve back in the 80s and early 90s. So very thankful for the opportunity. This is going to be fun.
You are busy. You've been busy and you've done some things, huh? Seen some things, done some things. 27 years, you said, as at LAPD?
I did. Yeah, it was January 1994, right after the big Northridge earthquake that collapsed freeways and all that kind of stuff. And right up till January 2021. And I'll be honest with you, some of those years were like dog years. And I'd probably say the first 5-8 years I would have done for nothing.
What was it like? What did you do? Like, so you have to understand, okay? Because I'm from Maine. So like our biggest police department in Maine is the Maine State Police, and that's like 350 on a good day. So like that's probably just like a department within your whole agency, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned, going across and spending some time with a lot of folks is we're all cut from the same cloth, right? Mm-hmm. But certainly major metropolitan agencies have greater exposure to things. That's the only thing I think that differentiates us. And yeah, we're a massive resource-rich organization. When I retired, we had 9,900 cops. I think about 2,500 or 3,000 civilian support folks in different capacities, mechanics, 911 operators, clerks, analysts, that kind of stuff. My last command, I was supervising 1,400 personnel, and in a budget of probably about 120 million in salary alone. Wow.
So what are some of the things, like, can you tell me, in your 27 years, you must have done a lot of things. Like what are some of the things where did you work? What within your agency?
So I started, so the LAPD's got 21 patrol divisions. Okay. Wow. And 5 of them are in South Los Angeles. And that's where I started after the academy in August. I graduated in August or September of 94. Actually, right after the O.J. Simpson saga, I guess. And that's a circus of a pursuit that was going all over the LA basin. Wow. And I started in South Los Angeles in a segment called Watts. There's 4 or 5 different housing developments, and it was right after the 92 riot, so there was significant violent crime and generational gang issues. So that's where I learned to be the police. Can
we talk about that? Because I can't see you on video. Are you white?
I am, yes.
So what was that like working in these major gang territories, and they probably hated you?
Yeah, they just, organizationally. I mean, I grew up in Connecticut, and, not too many minority families in the town that I grew up in. And I started working in South Los Angeles, and it was just incredible. I'll be honest with you. The most shocking thing to me was I started on the morning watch, and that was 23:30 to about 07:30 at night. Mm-hmm. And funny story, I mean, back then we were on obviously 8-hour shifts, and you started your shift the day ahead for the day prior, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So my first actual day after I graduated the academy on a Friday, I was UA. I missed my first work day, because I completely screwed up, showing up the day before for the next work day.
Yeah,
But that's how I started my career.
that's funny.
And then went right into morning watch. And, coming from a small town in Connecticut at 8, 9 o'clock at night, the whole town is buttoned up. And when you're in South Los Angeles at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, it is like, nothing I've ever seen. That was a culture shock in and of itself to me. Just the mere fact that there was so much activity, so much criminal activity going on, and so many people out was just it was tough for me to adjust. I'll be honest with you.
I bet. In what was going on at 2 or 4 in the morning? Yeah, because like in Maine, we're in bed. So what tell me what it was like. Was just people everywhere, people on the streets, or
So, criminal activity, the folks, the homeless folks that are pushed in, gang activity, drive-bys, vehicle pursuits, shootings, burglaries, disputes, traffic collisions. It was extremely busy. I mean, very rarely did we not have something to do, either going from call to call or initiating some type of activity. My head was spinning. The first couple of months, I did not feel comfortable in my job. It was just the learning curve was so steep. Not so much on the police side, but just, relating to what was going on. I was like kind of, like I fell in a black hole, if that makes sense. I've never been in something like this in my life. But it was very natural. The folks around there, when I say folks, the officers, the culture, the support, the expectations, I loved it. I love the high expectations. I love the work ethic. I love, looking out for the officer to your left and your right. And that was what was most important, to be a good officer. Obviously keep yourself and your partner safe and back each other up. And that was ingrained in me early on. And to this day, it's something I can still carry forward.
Do you think that the culture is different now? Like the brotherhood wise?
No, I don't think so. I have full faith and confidence in, the new workforce that's coming up. Everyone likes to grumble and complain about, the next generation didn't have it as hard as us, but I see the direct opposite. When I was leaving and interacting with these younger cops, they have tremendous experience, life experience, way above what I had at 23 when I started. We're talking combat veterans, IT capabilities. I mean, the folks that the LAPD recruits, I think, obviously Hollywood has a huge impact on it. But we have doctors, lawyers. I had a medical doctor, one of my gang units, just crazy talent down there. And the diversity in the talent is what makes that place so strong. It was a true pleasure, really was.
And what do you think? So we started to talk about it. So you've worked in a lot of different areas within the LAPD, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
A lot of different divisions.
Yeah. So I finished probation in South Los Angeles, and then I was wheeled to meaning you're transferred out once you're off probation after an 18-month period to a new division. And you're basically a slick sleeve officer off probation, and you're on your own. Work with your classmate, have fun. And I was sent to Venice Beach. Happened to be summertime, and at that point, we were augmenting, I think, 40 or 50 cops from all over the city that would be assigned there. And it was a great opportunity. I was riding a bike up and down Venice Beach with a couple of pals of mine. I mean, like I said, I would have done it for nothing.
Yeah.
After that, I was just intrigued by the gang lifestyle, right? I never had that experience or exposure in rural Connecticut. It was just something that was always in the movies or TV shows. So I was very interested in that. I competed for a spot at Pacific Area Crash, they called it back then, Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. Yeah, and they changed the name, obviously, later, and as we got deeper into, the late 90s and early 2000s. They changed it to Gang Enforcement Detail as a result of a lot of different things that were going on in the city. But I started at Pacific Crash, and then I went to South Bureau Crash, which was an incredible experience. Again, it was in charge of 4 different divisions in South Los Angeles, with a group of folks that were extremely committed. It was part of an FBI task force. I think we had I'd say 16 or 18 uniformed gang officers that worked, and we were extremely busy, just conducting search warrants, gathering intelligence, identifying wanted suspects. And it was every single day was something different. It was packed with excitement, and it was just an opportunity, honestly, to hang out with your pals. And it was awesome. It really was.
What like stood out to you as far as, so like I'm very fascinated about the gang life. Obviously, like we've discussed, I live in Maine. So, I mean, we have like, everybody jokes and everyone's like, oh yeah, like you guys are just the lobster police. Actually, no, we actually have legitimate gangs that come up from New York City and
Right.
from Boston, and they set up shop here and they make a ton of money selling drugs. But it's very obviously different than what you have experienced. What are some things, like, can you talk to me about that? Like what like stood out to you, and like what did you experience? Like,
I mean, the stark contrast in neighborhoods by streets, that completely blew me away. Like, the east side of a street could be one gang and the west side is the other, or the south side or the north side. And it was that deep, that structured, and I think, a couple of things that made it easy on us is, and anytime there was a wanted, suspect related to a gang activity back then, where would they go? They would go back to their neighborhood. So it wasn't that difficult of a find, right? It would be a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever. But it's not like they could go hide out in some other neighborhood. And that was a real fear back then. That was real violence. If you're a Crip and you're walking in a blood neighborhood or vice versa, and back then there were still flying colors, blues and reds and that kind of stuff. Be it shoelaces, hats, handkerchiefs, whatever, right? Anything, and that you would be a target for nothing other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it was just, how deep those lines are. And we're talking generations. This is not something that just spun up. This is, I work with folks that arrested parents of the gangsters that were out there. I mean, just generational, decline in crime was incredible.
And it's just, it's crazy to think of, And so like, how did you like, because like one thing that fascinates me with your career is obviously the kind of leadership, and I really want to get into leadership, but so many people think that leadership is like a position or a title, or you can't be a leader until somebody else says that you are. But like what I talk a lot about is officers themselves, really. I mean, even for, boots on the ground, even rookies, day one, I mean, you really are a leader in society. The minute you put, you take the oath and you put the uniform on. And so like, how did you, honestly, like, I'm just going to be very blunt. Like, how the hell did you survive like the streets out there as, this, white officer who obviously from rural Connecticut? Like, you must have had to really learn how to communicate and really relate to these people, correct?
Oh, 100%. And I credit that to my tenured training officers. I mean, back then when I say that, early 90s, you would have a field training officer that had 20 years on the job, easy. Right. And, and what you learn from him or her is how to communicate with people, how to treat people. Right. We could always get out of the car and fight. That's always an option.
Yes.
But it never works out good for us. No. So if you could, talk to someone or cut them a break, or don't embarrass them in public, or, pull them off to the side, have a conversation with them. That's the way that you actually get effective policing done. As far as leadership, I mean, 100%. You put on a badge or gun, be it firefighter, whatever, military, certainly police. You stand out. That you're expected to bring calm to chaos, regardless of what's going on. You're in the food line, traffic collision, somebody gets hit walking across the street. They're all looking to you, so you are a leader. Right. I mean, so the leadership qualities and traits, they're all the same, right? Leadership can be defined by different billets and positions, but how you conduct yourself as a leader is the same. And that's what made it easy for me, right? As I rose up the ranks from sergeant, lieutenant, captain, commander, I always went back to my roots. I didn't try and be somebody I wasn't. I just kept it simple, right? I mean, empower people. How would you want to be treated? How much latitude would you want? what did I want at that position? I just kept it simple. Don't complicate it.
What do you like? What's some advice that you could give like a newer officer who's really trying to find their way? Like I've got a lot of people who listen to this podcast who either want to become police officers or they're, newer on the road. We do have obviously several seasoned officers, but right now I want to talk to like the newer officer. What would you what do you say? Like, what would you say to them as far as, how to build that leadership, and like how to have them understand that, wait a minute, you are a leader, and here are some tips and tricks to really be the best leader that you can be.
I mean, I can just say what got me to where I was. I'm certainly not this, leadership expert or a sensei or whatever, but you have to be a good teammate, right?
Mhm.
Whether you're a trooper on the road and there's one or two of you at night, or you're part of, an LAPD Special Operations Command where there's 500 folks, you have to be a good teammate, and that requires some individual effort as well. And I don't want to complicate that like, it's an individual game as a police officer. You're responsible for your capabilities as a part of that team. So as a younger officer, concentrate on that, your strength, your knowledge. Do you have the legal standing? Do you understand the differences, how a consensual encounter can change in a moment's notice? Do you understand that you're in a house and all of a sudden you had legal authority and you don't? I mean, those are the types of things as an individual that I would tell each officer or trooper or deputy, know those inside and out, right? I mean, that makes you a better teammate. Be strong, physically fit. I think I've gotten out or skirted a lot of fights in my life, I'll be honest with you, just because how I looked. And I was fortunate, tall. I was mandated to stay in shape just because of the special operations job that I had. And I was also a Marine reservist, so it was easy for me. But there is documented interviews and investigations with cop killers that have targeted specifically officers that look a certain way, and I
agree. I talk about this all the time. The command presence it's huge, and especially, it's for men and women, but I just preach it to the women all the time because I'm like, you automatically are looked at to be weaker. So let's not give them an inch.
No, not at all. Not at all. And that, sort of like a gentle giant, you step out of the car from your first contact, how you approach people, what you're looking at, how you address them, all of that leads up to either, hey, I'm going to fight this guy, or B, hopefully I don't have to, right? And how you talk to him, and all that is learned, right? Pay attention. And we've all had terrible training officers, terrible sergeants, whatever, right? But there is something to learn from those folks, right? I mean, I have a lot of, bad habits that I learned that were awful, right? But that was good for me as a leader, as I developed in my career, because I'm like, I don't ever want to do that ever.
Right.
Right. So don't be like, oh, I'm stuck with this guy or gal and he's terrible. No, learn from him or her, right? Learn what not to do. And don't
go ahead.
No, I wouldn't be afraid to make mistakes. Right. We're, the tough part about the culture of policing is we're expected to be perfect.
Yeah.
All the time, every single time, every moment. And don't take yourself too seriously. Admit that you made a mistake. Admit often, hey, I tried something and I really jacked that one up. And I'm going to learn from it. And that's what career survival is like. You want to make it 27 years, 30 years. Be honest to yourself. Look to your pals to support you. Prop them up when they're needed. Maintain the most proficient capabilities that you can as an individual, and be a good teammate.
Ed, how did you survive the career with such a good attitude that you have right now?
So with 4 years on the job, I competed for our Special Operations Command, which was called Metropolitan. And back then there was 2 platoons of crime suppression. So they would handle stuff that was beyond the scope and capability of a normal command. President comes into town, riots, disasters, fires, crowd control, Democratic National Convention, Lakers celebrations, Academy Awards, all that nonsense would be handled by that command. And inside there is the mounted unit. They had 30 or 40 horses. Canine unit back then had 16 handlers, and the SWAT team. And that's what I wanted to do in my life. I initially wanted to be an LAPD SWAT officer. I was influenced very young in my career, just seeing how they deployed to situations. So professional, so articulate, so strong, mentally and physically, so professional. I wanted to do that. And, once I got into Metropolitan Division, I saw the difference in the jobs and fell in love with canine. So yeah, in 1992, 99 or 2000, I was accepted into the canine unit after 3 failures, not failures, just 3 non-selections. They picked somebody else. And I finally made it in. It was the best job I have ever had in my life, hands down. And I don't care what I'll be doing in the next 20 years. That was it. Period.
What kind of dog did you handle?
So I started off with a Czech Shepherd.
Really?
Yeah, I did. He was awesome. I mean, he was just so methodical, so mature in his searching patterns and, differentiating between scent and, didn't worry about chasing dogs, squirrels, owls, none of that nonsense, but very methodical. And he got hurt on a search in the valley. One of the suspects that he was in contact with hit him with a brick in his spine. During a contact. Yeah, I didn't think anything of it because they're bionic. And then the very next day, I was just doing basic obedience with him on the canine field, and he couldn't jump over a bag of trash. He was wincing, and I'm like, what the hell happened to him? Long story short, we took him to the doctor. He had surgery, and he retired. He lived in my bathroom for 6 months because he had to wait for his back to fuse, and he lived at home with us for a good 6 or 7 years. From there, I went on. Yeah, no, awesome opportunities and incredible dogs. And from there, I went on to Belgian Malinois. His name was Axel. I got him young. He was 16 months. He didn't have any basic obedience at all. He didn't know sit, heel, revere, sir. He didn't know anything. So it was so much fun. I worked him for 4.5 years. He was an incredible dog. And when I left, I promoted. He continued to work for another handler.
Really?
And that's something that's funny too. Everyone, dog lovers and everything else. Oh, the dog bonds with you. Yeah, they do, but they actually bond with the guy or gal that feeds them. These are work dogs.
Yeah.
And if you bring them to what their release is, physically working, they don't care.
Yeah.
But it was so rewarding. I did that for 5 years. I think it was on almost 1,000 searches. I mean, back then it was so busy that some days I didn't even come home. I didn't even know what day it was. You'd be called out from home. We worked from 2000 to 04. It was an 8-hour shift back then. And then you'd be on standby from 04 till 2000. So you're working all night, carjack searches, shooting suspects, burglary, building searches. We were doing about 3 or 4 searches a day for outstanding suspects. And
wow.
You'd get called up at 9 o'clock in the morning for a bank robbery search that went down in the valley. Back then, Los Angeles was the bank robbery capital of the world. I think they had 400 or 500 a year. I mean, that was just crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy excitement. I was addicted to the adrenaline and the excitement. You would just show up at a very chaotic scene, an officer involved shooting, another shooting, a carjacking, a pursuit, a car crash that went through a house. And there's 60, 70 cops, command staff officers there, and they're all waiting for this, goofy 2.5-year-old Malinois to go find a suspect. I mean, it's so much fun. It really was incredible.
We have, I think I told you this, but yeah, we have 3. We have 2 Belgian Malinois and we have a Dutch Shepherd, and my husband handles them for the state police, and he, just like you, says it's the absolute best thing he's ever done, and hands down best part of his career.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we were so fortunate because the unit was so big. We've been through our lawsuits and litigation back in the 80s that crafted it and impacted our policy from find and bite to find and bark. And just masterful dogs, but significant training required. Our training staff there is second to none. I'll be honest with you. One of the folks there, Mike Gooseby, is a national expert, and he just recently retired. Just incredible knowledge working with these dogs, and you're constantly every single day training something. So it was a lot of fun. It really was.
And do you think because you got to do something that you really loved, And it obviously it wasn't handed to you. You had to try out. You worked really hard, even though a couple of times you didn't get the position. But do you think that that played in to the fact that you obviously are an emotional, survivor of this job? Do you think that that played a role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you set yourself up for a goal, and I think going off on a tangent here, I think the most effective thing I've done as a command officer or a senior staff officer is to knock down the artificial barriers of folks that think, oh, I can't do that job because they don't take females, or I don't have enough time in the job, or when you actually tell people the truth. Hey, we want you. We want you to compete for it. We need you to compete for it. Don't listen to your peers, right? I mean, the criteria to get into special operations is 4 years in a day and pass a physical fitness test, oral, background, shooting. And if you can make that, you make the outstanding list and you get chosen.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the informal culture of the organization will say, oh, don't try out for that special ops team until you have 10 years on the job.
Right.
That's the biggest thing we can do as leaders is go up to those young cops and be like, hey, I really want to see you compete next year, or we got a great spot for you, or just give them I guess open that window for them, right? Because everybody has goals, but until someone actually opens that door for them, it's hard to do that. And I one of the guys that opened the door for me or just impacted me is Tim Anderson. He's actually being laid to rest at Arlington October 24th of this year. He was a retired Marine colonel, and he was a canine sergeant. And I just, bumped into him working crash in 1996, and just significantly impacted me. One of those guys like, hey, we got a spot for you. Looking forward to seeing you in a year or two. So that has a huge impact.
And I think that's something that, very important, very, very important for everybody to hear. And because especially in today's culture, you can get very caught up, we can get very swept up, especially in social media, right? Especially for, the officers who aren't as busy. They're not going call to call to call. They're spending time on the socials. Okay. And they're scrolling and they're getting caught up in the whole idea of like, everybody hates us and, there's no brotherhood. And then there's, the job sucks and all these things. And I just think it's really important that everybody hears what you're saying. And it really starts with us. I mean, it really starts with the person. It starts with you, yourself, leading yourself. I was just talking to a client of mine this morning. He works down in Florida and he's part of the LGBTQ community. And he's actually a big leader down there heading the sheriff's departments. They have like a whole thing that they do for them. I'm not sure. I can't get into specifics because I don't know about it a whole lot about it, but I know that he has a lot of impact there. But we were talking about the idea of leading yourself. Like you got to stop looking for the person who you want to lead you, and you've got to lead you, because that's just what you have to do as a leader. So stop looking for somebody else to lead you, and you start doing that and start leading other people. And the impact will be significant, just like you said. And I think it's important for all of us to hear. Ed, I've been sitting here thinking and wondering, I've got some questions that I don't know if you've ever been asked before, but I'm just going to ask you. Have you ever seen the TV series Southland?
Yes.
Is that anything like LAPD? Like, would that be like what I would be like?
Yes, very accurate. And I forget the folks that were actually advisors on that show.
Really?
But it was, yeah. And I can tell you, the movie Colors with Robert Duvall and Sean Penn back in the day, that was South Bureau crash. I mean, obviously sensationalized, but the relationships, for the older officer and the younger officer, 100% accurate, that type of description. And the activities back then was very much the same, working a gang funeral, trying to prevent drive-bys. I mean, it's craziness.
What about End of Watch? Did you watch that?
So the crazy thing is I was the captain of that division, Newton, when that movie came out.
Really?
Yeah. And we had a special screening downtown at the Nokia Center. And again, the banter, the relationships between, the partners and the cops, what goes on in the roll call room, that kind of stuff was spot on.
Really?
Oh, yeah, clearly. The banter between officers and relationships and what they're focusing on as young cops, but clearly sensationalized, some of the action scenes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was awesome. And that, that command was Newton Street. And one of their mottos was shooting Newton. I mean, it was something that yeah, it's crazy. And long story short, the community actually gave that, I guess, moniker to that command. It was home to two of the biggest shootouts in LAPD history before the North Hollywood bank robbery shootout.
Really?
Yeah, the Patty Hearst shooting and the SLA shooting back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, crazy. And yeah, I just want to touch on one point. Don't listen. I can't say don't listen to social media because it's captivating. And I actually just got on my first social media. I mean, Instagram. It's my first thing I opened up. I've been trying to keep up with my son and daughter, and it's funny. I'm an IT caveman for sure. But it's tough for young cops and tenured officers not to pay attention to that stuff. But I can tell you from experience, right? We work in some of the most violent parts of South Los Angeles, and we were hated in certain sectors, but we were loved as well, right? I can't tell you how many canine searches I've been on walking down the side of a house, and some lady would peek her head out and just kind of point like, hey, the guy's under there, or check the trash can kind of thing, right? I mean, so there's so many people that don't post on social media. There's so many people that don't protest, that are just the silent majority that do. They do love us. They do need us. Yeah. But it's at greater risk for them to support us because now everybody's got a cell phone. So, I mean, don't pay attention to those negative naysayers. Make your own path, believe in your integrity, take care of each other. And I'm a firm believer in, the pendulum will swing back. We're certainly at a point right now in law enforcement that we've been at before. And we can recover, and we will. I believe still in the democracies and the systems and the oversights. It will come back. It will swing back. I mean, it just has to, and historically it has. And we've been in this position in the 60s. So
yeah, I think that's really refreshing for you to say too, and especially someone who's been around for a minute and seen some things and done some things, and I do think that's quite refreshing. Especially for the younger generation to hear that, the pendulum will swing back and that we have been here before, that social media will tell you, oh, it's never been like this. And this is the worst we have ever seen it. And I'm sure like for some people it is, they're not lying. This is what the worst they have ever seen it be. Right. But like you said, historically, I mean, we have been here before.
Yeah. And I don't, I've always been biased, in my career. I don't know if it was from, the Marine Corps early on or what, but if you stood up and were going to tell me or teach me something, you had damn well better know what you're talking about. Right. So, I mean, if someone's bloviating or, typing away as a keyboard ninja and, down with the police hey, look, man, who are you? Right. Where have you been? Have you even ever sacrificed yourself for somebody else? If not, no, thank you. Right. I'm not really interested. So I'm a firm believer in that. And again, it's one of the biases I have going through my career and training and schools and all that nonsense. I immediately go to the bio. And if whoever that, guy or gal is standing in front of me, if you don't have the bona fides, I just shut you off. And it's not a good thing. It's just one of my faults, but
I don't know. I don't really think it's a fault. I think it's especially in today's day and age, and the keyboard warriors and me and my people know that they come after me all the time because they don't like the things that I have to say. But what you're saying is just so true. It's like, the keyboard warriors who come after me are typically they live in their mom's basement. And they, so it's like, it doesn't even matter. Like, nothing. So I like that approach. Ed, as we, wind down, I have a couple of things that are on my mind that I have got to ask you. And I'm sure that the listeners want to know, and they'd be so mad at me if I let you get off this podcast with me and I didn't ask you. Would you be willing to share with us, some call or a story or something like that stands out to you, like the worst call or the most a call that stands out to you that you've ever had, you've gone through in your career, 27 years in LAPD? Is there something that you could share with
Yeah,
us?
there's so many, and I try and, focus on the funny times, right? I mean, I laughed so much as an officer sergeant, and I tried as a command officer to, laugh with my pals. So many funny things go on out there, and there's tragedy too. I remember 2 or 3 weeks on the job, there was a discarded fetus, in the trash can in Watts. We did everything we can. It was still alive. We put it on the hood of the car, waiting for the ambulance to show up just to keep it warm. And, there's so many terrible and tragic things that everybody experiences, whether you're in Bangor, Maine, or, Helena, Montana, or South Los Angeles. We experience the same nonsense. But some of the most gratifying, I mean, I can tell you right now, I would take my kids to work and my wife. When I was a captain and above, you're kind of required to come in off hours, check on your folks, be seen, fly the flag. So I always take my family. And some of the things they stumbled on is just crazy. I probably shouldn't have, but it was just one of those things. I remember I would drive around the city, we'd take them, we'd go get something to eat. And I could always navigate the city, not by freeways and streets, but like memories. Like, hey, I found a guy under a house over here, or I was in a search team and the guy was on the roof, or the helicopter found the guy over here. And I would just be telling these stories just because there's memories that flash in my head as I go through the intersection. It's not like I'm just, trying to impress people, but that's how I remember this stuff.
Right.
I think some of the funny times, or certainly with K9 or the special operations folk, or an air support flying around, absolute scientists and experts, incredible capabilities. We had a fresh murder in the city of El Monte that came into Rampart, and he killed his mom and his wife with a kitchen knife. And Rampart cops pick him up, and they're southbound on the 110 freeway right through downtown. It's like 2200 at night. Wow. So we're paying attention to it at K9. The suspect gets out in the middle of the freeway, 5 lanes each way, and just runs. Right, helicopter overhead. Helicopter loses him on an overpass, and now freeway shut down, and they're waiting for that goofy 2.5-year-old canine to get out, right? So at nighttime, scent rolls downhill. So we start to run the embankment from the freeway, as opposed to if it was daytime, he'd be up on the top because scent rises. So we're working the bottom, and I can't call this dog back. He continuously goes to this underside of an overpass. And they're like, no, the airship had the guy over here. He's in this pile of bushes. I'm like, okay, dude, but I'm telling you, I'm like juicing my dog with the electric collar. I'm like, hey, come on back. He's not coming. And he's doing circles, right? And sure as shit, as luck would have it, you always, trust the dog, follow the dog. Yes. The dog doesn't have an ego, right? The cops are like, I lost him here. I saw him. He's here. Okay, I believe you, but let's work to a work. So we search and nothing, right? They're like, okay, maybe the guy jumped in an irrigation ditch. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe hyperspaced out of here, but let's go back to where the dog had him. And sure as hell, the guy was hiding up there, laying down, and we gassed him out. But just, so many funny things, and just seeing the reward in the dog and working with your pals, it was great memories. So the great memories and the funny times certainly outweigh, the tragedy and shock and trauma. And I think, the reason, I'm not saying I was lucky or successful, but I survived the 27 years with my health is because I found the humor in it. Right. You got to laugh at yourself. You got to laugh. And it's just a way that we deal with stressful situations. So find that time, to laugh at yourself or laugh with your pals.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think, we don't do that as a culture, as a society. We don't laugh nearly enough,
Oh, 100%. I mean, I can't, I try to now that I'm retired, but the best times in my life is when I was crying, laughing, right? If you could think back with your friends or pal, I mean, that is such a great feeling.
Yes.
And we did it so often. It was, that's what propelled me through. That's my, I guess, adrenaline. That was my drug. It was a lot of fun for sure.
And so, Ed, like, what do you do now? You're in retirement, but you're working for FLETC, correct?
I am, yeah. So FLETC basically trains all the federal law enforcement agencies. There's, I think, 103 of them, and every day I'm learning a new acronym and agency. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, everybody has them. The U.S. Mint Police, IRS, Marshals, ATF, Secret Service, uniformed, FBI uniform. I mean, there's so many agencies. I think they touch about 75,000 new agents and officers going through their facility. I mean, so it's an incredible operation. Yeah, so I'm thankful just to be working there. And I'll be honest with you, when I got hired, it actually made it easier for me to step away from a career that I love. Right, I think it, to a fault, it became part of my identity, I guess. And when you leave that just cold turkey, it could be tough.
Yeah.
And now, being at the law enforcement training center, I see these new kids, these new agents that are just like so happy to have a job, so thankful, so excited, and it's just fun, from afar to watch them and still kind of be connected to that, if that makes sense.
So you were an instructor there?
So I was, yeah. I started as a instructor with behavioral sciences, teaching, interviewing, and interrogations and that kind of stuff. And then I just last year was promoted to the chief of the Leadership Institute, which does a lot of advanced training, leadership through understanding human behavior, crisis leadership, that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what that group of folks is focused on. And I'm just managing people at this point. They're doing the expert teaching, and I'm just, making sure that they have what they need to get it done.
And so, Ed, where are you going to go from here? What's the plan? Where are you headed? Because you're not I don't think you're a guy to just stand still.
No, I forgot how, just very thankful to be connected with, Eagle Rise speakers. That was an incredible opportunity for me. I never saw myself in that environment, that position. Like I said, I've never talked about myself or, given, speeches. I've just kind of done my thing, taking care of my folks, and got promoted. So what's next for me is taking care of my two young kids. I got a 16 and a 14-year-old, which are incredibly busy and successful. And I want to be there for what's important to them, relationship stuff, sports, ups and downs. And, my wife carried us through, all those years. She was, the stable, I guess the stable rock for the family, right? Because I was all over the map. I think, my last year, I got called out as a special operations commander 150 times.
Wow.
Off hours, right? So you have your work day, and then you're getting called to, a SWAT barricade, an officer involved shooting, hostage rescue, whatever that nonsense was, and you're gone. I mean, it took its toll. So I want to be there for them, and what that looks like, I don't know. And I sit and reflect, and I think one of the personal struggles that I have is I haven't had the opportunity to find out, what my hobbies are. Right. I mean, I don't even know what I like to do, right? If I wasn't to work, that's the weird thing, because I was so focused on just the job, the churn, paying attention. There's so many crisis events, so much drama. You're not even really focused. I mean, I was thankful just to keep working out. My wife's a CrossFit instructor. She keeps me in shape. But I'd like to find what I want to do as a person. So that's my challenge.
I love it. I love it so much. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us a little bit and share some of your wisdom. And I just really hope the listeners can hear just even in your voice and your attitude. Actually, I've talked to several career cops, I could say, and your attitude is very refreshing. And I think that we can all learn from that. And the last thing I would just like to add, is there anything that you would like to, leave our listeners with?
I just be true to yourself. I was fortunate to navigate an incredibly scrutinous environment. And I never operated or worked a position wanting to go somewhere else. So if you concentrate on doing the best damn job at where you're at, enjoying where you're at now, the next door will open, right? I mean, for instance, I didn't even want to promote when I was in K9. I had back surgery in 2003, and that was kind of how I was kind of forced. A buddy of mine actually told me, hey, they're going to retire you you better take the sergeant's test and get a higher pension because they're going to fuse your back and retire you. I'm like, what? I never even thought about that. One thing led to another, and here I am. I mean, stay true to yourself. Don't take yourself too seriously. Admit your mistakes often. Explain what you want to accomplish, and don't be afraid to fail. Stay grounded. Find that, whatever that is at home, that balances, right? My father told me this. He said, you got to be happy going to life or going to work, and you got to be happy going home. Mm-hmm. And I stole that. Every roll call I talked at, that's the priority, right? I needed my cops to have a level head and be happy leaving work as they are coming to work. And that's your burden as a leader, to make sure that happens. That's
incredible and amazing words to live by. Thank you so much, Ed. Where can the people find you on your new social media?
So EJ_Prokop. That's my first Instagram, so that's my only social media capability, or EagleRiseSpeakers.com for sure.
And Prokop is Prokop? Correct.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, we'll put a link down so that we can all go and follow you on your new adventures. And I look forward to talking to you more, Ed. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.